Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of OneMicNite, the podcast that brings you story of people and artists on their journey, helping to guide, answer questions, and motivate you in the business and life. Thank you all for joining me on this long journey. We're now in season 3, and we have reached a point where we are talking about a series of episodes. So this series that we're doing right now on OneMicNite is called the African Life Series. And today my guest is part of that series. He is an award-winning journalist for the Foreign Press. He's a writer, and he's a host of his own Africa Talk podcast. Please welcome Nii Akrofi to OneMicNite. Nii, how are you?
I'm good, Marcus. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're a busy man. But listen, I have questions.
Okay.
First of all, who is Nii Akrofi?
Ooh, that's like a $1 million question.
It sure is.
Let me see if I can give a short answer to that. I guess I'll say Nii Akrofi is a multimedia journalist and a writer, just as you introduced earlier. But I'm also a bit of a jack of all trades. I dabble in the arts. I've done some acting, some singing in the past. Yeah, but I like to think of myself more, but I like to identify myself more by my day job, which is to say I'm a journalist and a writer, and yeah, from Ghana in West Africa, and I'm still trying to evolve day by day, try to see how much I can stretch myself to do as many of the things that I know I can do. Like I said, I've done some acting, some writing and all that, so yeah, trying to still identify and get to know myself better as the day goes by. Yeah.
That seems to be the challenge with everybody. Let's talk about where you were born. You were born in Ghana. Where in Ghana?
Yeah, I was born in Accra, which is the capital of Ghana. So, and my father also happens to come from, his tribe happens to come from Accra, which is the capital. So yeah, you can say I've been a city boy through and through.
Okay.
All my life, yeah.
Tell us, what do you like? I want to get a feel for what it's like there, because just as an average American, we don't really know what life is like, in Ghana or where you're from. Can you kind of give us a little piece? You said tribe, so what do you mean? What is life like there?
Okay, so first of all, I'll say Accra is what we like to say, a cosmopolitan city, because we have people from all over the country living in Accra, and the region that is called the Greater Accra region itself, like the way we have New York City out of New York State. It's the tiniest of the 10 regions we have in Ghana. Well, we used to have 10, now they've created a few more, so we have more than 10 now, but it's the tiniest of the regions we have in the country. But I guess because it's the capital, that's where the administrative arm of the government is. The government itself is there, the parliament or the legislature is there itself, the judiciary is also there. So you have people from the north, the middle part of the country, the coastal side, everybody trying to, make a life, as it were, in Accra. So it is very vibrant, very colorful, and as I said, it's cosmopolitan. So you can see a lot of expatriates also there. You see Americans on the streets, you hear French people speaking French on the street. Don't be surprised to hear some Spanish people. We have a fairly huge Indian community before I left as well. So it's like a melting pot, just like New York City is. You can find people from all walks of life in Accra doing all sorts of business. Yeah.
Is tourism the big import there? I mean, like agriculture, or I'm sure tourism plays a huge part.
Yeah. Tourism actually, it does contribute a huge a chunk to the national economy, because we have lots of tourist sites all over the country. Accra, just like New York, has its own tourism sites, but it's not like the natural resources type of tourism that you would find. It's more monuments, like where the first president of the country was buried. We have the zoo. We have a thriving art market called Art Center. We have the National Theater, which is where every performance, plays, music concerts, a lot of stuff happen over there as well. You have like Jamestown, which is my hometown, which has now become the scene for this vibrant art festival, annual art festival called Chalewote Street Art Festival, which happens every year in August. So it draws lots of people to that part of the city as well. So yeah, tourism does play a crucial role. I think at one point it was our number one foreign income earner at one point, but it often fluctuates between that and cocoa. We are also the world's second leading of cocoa.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know
So,
that.
well, probably the chocolate you've been eating here comes from my country, except that
Really?
we don't produce all of it. So a lot of the cocoa beans are exported to other countries, especially to Switzerland, and then they tend to make the chocolates out of them and then ship them to other parts of the world. So there's a high probability of eating some Ghanaian cocoa, which has been made into chocolate, or your chocolate drink that you've been drinking. Yeah.
Interesting. I had no idea. Okay. What was life growing up like for you? What was it like?
It was a great life, I'd say. I grew up. I spent my I spent my formative years between my father's place, my father's residence, and then my grandmother's residence, or like my grandparents, because the house belonged to my grandfather. But after my father died, my mom and I moved back in to live with my grandmother and her extended family, essentially afterwards. So I grew up in a large house, lots of cousins, lots of aunts, lots of uncles around. So I learned everything and a lot of things. Like I learned to cook while I was living with them, because cooking was, interestingly, in a traditional African sense, they'll tell you, oh, cooking is not for the man, it's for the woman and all that. But that wasn't the case in the house I grew up in. My uncles would cook, even though some of them were married, they would cook for for their wives and kids as well. And those who were not married will cook for themselves. So I also learned to cook over there. I learned to, be more empathetic, because you're with different people. Everybody is dealing with something each
Yes,
and every
for
day.
sure.
So you have to, and it takes a village. So when my mom is not around, her siblings, her mother, my other uncles and aunts step in to take care of me as well. So I learned all of that. And it was a happy childhood for me, I must say. I was a bit of a troublemaker, but it takes a village, so they whip you in line as soon as you get off the rails. Yeah.
So that troublemaker probably helped you gain your career a little bit too, because you're probably inquisitive, you probably were curious, and a lot of
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because
Interesting.
as far as I can remember, I don't remember a lot of my childhood, but I know I've always been the child who likes to ask questions. And sometimes you're told, no, you don't have to ask this question. Kids don't have to know about this yet. Or, no, you can't ask an adult this question. But yeah, well, my little mind wants to know why. So I will ask. Whether I get an answer or not, that's entirely different. Yeah.
That's great. What's the school system like there?
Okay, so we have, well, I think we kind of inherited the British system, but we evolved over time. So we used to have, when you get to high school, you had what they call the ordinary level and the advanced level, but that was scrapped. By the time I went to high school, it was straightforward. So you do early childhood, kindergarten, then you do the basics, which is like first grade to fifth grade. Then you have junior high school, which is usually 3 years. Then after that, you have high school, which is another 3 years. I went through a period when they were experimenting with the high school system. So I did just 2.5 years of high school instead of 3 years.
What do you mean? They only what you were excelling in the school and they placed you out, or
No,
they
well,
just
my
decided to?
cohort as a general, everyone that went to high school in 2001, we all ended up doing just 2.5 years, because I think the government at the time was playing with the idea, do we really need 3 years to give these kids high school education? How about we give them just 2.5 years, because some of the things they're going to learn, they've learned some part of it already in junior high. So maybe they don't need to stay for another 3 years to make it 6 years of high school or something like that. I don't know what they were thinking, but I like to think that was the idea. So we did 2.5 years, but it's gone back to 3 years now. And then
Gotcha.
after that, you either go to college or yeah, whatever your future holds. Then
What
that's up
so
to you.
when you exited, I guess the high school or the last few years of school, what was your age?
Do I even remember now? I guess I must have been 18. Yeah, I think I was 18 when I left high school.
Right. So that's about the same as here in the US.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Because I started journalism school, or yeah, I think I started journalism school at 19. That's when I start my journalism career started. I know my journalism career started at age 19. So yeah, I must have exited at 18 and then I went straight into journalism school.
gotcha. When did you find out you wanted to be a journalism? Was there a time that you just knew that you wanted to work in media and
Yeah,
in
I
arts?
it was a childhood dream. I had way too many dreams as a child, really, honestly. I didn't have one specific career path that I
Which
wanted to follow.
actually it turns out to be a good thing. Like a lot of times we
Yeah,
think that, dreaming and, you need to be more focused. That's the way they teach us here in the States. You got to be focused on
exactly.
one thing. But I think just
Hmm.
the opposite. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, no, that's fine. So, as a kid, I wanted to do so many different things, but journalism came in much earlier when I think I was about 7 or 8. One of my cousins was the news anchor on the state broadcaster. So, I remember one evening I saw her reading, and I said to my uncle who was visiting at the time, you know what? When I grow up, I want to be like my cousin, reading the news on TV. And he was like, no, no, no way, you don't want to do that. I want you to be a lawyer. So when we have disputes in the family that needs a lawyer's perspective or whatever, you can do it. And I said, nah, I really don't think I want law. Then, of course, I started school as I aged. I think we had career day when I was in junior high school, and they told us about, oh, we have these state, we have these bungalows, we call them public housing provided for dentists across the country, but we don't have too many dentists in the system. So I thought, that would be interesting. Why don't I become a dentist? I don't have to rent. I don't have to pay rent. The government is going to give me free accommodation. That's great. But then by my final year in junior high school, I was falling in love deeper and deeper with biology. So I said, you know what? I just want to be a surgeon. Just cut people up, see what's inside the human body. And that was the only
Really?
reason I wanted to be a surgeon.
That's
Not because
funny.
I wanted to heal people or help them. No, I was just curious about what's inside the human body. Once you take off this flesh that we all kind of fight over sometimes about whether you're dark skin or light skin, when you cut it open, what's underneath? That has always intrigued me and it still intrigues me till today. So journalism actually came because when I got to high school, I joined the drama club.
Hmm.
And one of the seniors there helped me find myself as a writer at that point. So when he graduated and I was going to my second year, I said, you know what? I think I want to be a writer when I grow up, but we don't have writing programs in Ghana. So how do I do it? And at that time, he had started going to the Institute of Journalism. And he said, well, you can come here. They train people to write, but it's for the news. It's not the type of writing you want to do. Just try it. If you like it, good. If not, you can do something else. So my mom had wanted me to go to the traditional college, do traditional stuff, but I said, no, I want to be a writer. We tried some writing programs in the UK. We didn't have the money to pay for it. So I said, okay, you know what, scrap it. I'll go to the journalism school and find myself as a writer and then just start writing from there. But I did my first year internship at a radio station called Joy FM. And I guess they liked me because I was supposed to do just 1 month over there, but they made me do both months of my internship over there. And after the second month, they said, oh, how about, would you want to be like a weekend worker? You come here on Friday after school and then work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I said, sure, why not? So I stayed on and then journalism became my career kind of by default. So
Interesting. I like that. You touched on a couple of points that I'm interested in. So living in Ghana, living where you live, say the name again, Acosti,
Accra.
Accra.
Yeah.
What was the media like? What was the TV like? You said it's a British colony. So were you
Yeah.
seeing a lot of Ghanaians? I'm sorry, on
Ghanaians, yeah.
Ghanaians on TV,
Mm-hmm.
or were you seeing more British? Were you seeing more like what were
It
your
was,
role models? You know what I mean? Like coming from there,
yeah.
how would you
Mhm.
was the idea of being in media something that was really like possible for you, or was it?
Oh
Did
yeah,
most
it,
people feel
it
like it was a
was
dream?
it was possible because private media and let me say actually private radio started in Ghana, I think in 1995. So I was, you know, I was still in my formative years at the time, but it became possible that you don't have to listen to the only station that is run by the government. You had another option now. And by the time I finished junior high school, went to high school, we had multiple private radio stations. So it was
Uh,
easy for me to fancy becoming a media
right.
personality because at one point I even wanted to be like a disc jockey on radio and just have my own show and play music. And it was easy to dream about that because I mean you tune in the radio, turn the dial, chances are you fall on a private radio station, you hear someone doing it. So yeah, it wasn't a far-fetched dream. But I guess when I started doing media itself or when I started getting into that space of no, I think I want to be a journalist type of thing. At that point, I would say a lot of the influences I had were from the BBC, that's the British broadcasting, both their radio and TV, and then CNN, which I was able to get access to back home. So at that point, I said, I'd like to be a journalist, but then I hope to become an international journalist. So it wasn't a limited dream of just being a journalist and working in Ghana. It became being a journalist and being able to, be having an impact around the world, if I
Around
can
the
put it that
world, yeah. I guess that's good because you can't, like you said, it's if that's in 95, the I guess like the internet became
way.
really big in 95.
Hmm.
I want to think. Yeah.
I think
So
yeah, it was
that
around the
helped
90s.
to produce more online radio and more privatized businesses.
Well,
And that
online
helps
radio
you
didn't come in until much later. I think in the 2000s.
in 2000.
That was
Okay.
when we started having a lot of them. Yeah, yeah.
But I guess maybe having access to more
Hmm.
things through the
Yeah,
internet and,
exactly.
probably came into to play in 95
Hmm.
for you. That's great. What so from there after journalism, where did you go
Well, so after
to
my
college?
my
To
journalism
college.
training,
Hmm.
yeah, I went back to college because my mom she wanted me to go to college. So I said, okay, because in at the journalism institute I did an associate, which was just for 2 years. So she's like, journalism is becoming competitive because this was in what 2005 ish thereabout, and there's the need for career progression because you don't want to be a junior reporter for the rest of your life. You want to grow up, become a senior reporter, and if you, in my case, you're dreaming of becoming an international journalist, then you need to do more. So I went back to college. But before I did, I taught myself Spanish for like a few months, and so I chose as my programs for college French, Spanish, and sociology. And I was doing very well in Spanish, but then I started realizing there was a conflict between my Spanish and my French. Like I go for a French oral exam and I hear myself speaking or dropping Spanish words in, and the reverse happens when I'm in the Spanish orals. I'm like, como se dice? And then I'll mention the French word instead of the English word that I want them to help me with the Spanish translation. So I spoke to one of my academic advisors and he was like, well, we are surrounded by Francophone countries. So I would say stick with French. Since you taught yourself Spanish, you could always go back and teach yourself or refreshing or polish up the Spanish as it were. So I ended up doing a double major in French and sociology. Yeah, graduated from college in 2010. Yeah.
Okay. And you did some private reporting. Who did you work
Yeah.
for when you did that?
So, well, I worked with Joy FM till I started college. And then I started writing for a newspaper because my boss at the newspaper had been with me at radio at Joy FM and he had started his own newspaper. And he said, would you like to write for me? And his schedule was more flexible because, college, you have classes at this time, then you have like a long break, and then you have another class in the evening or something.
Mm-hmm.
And his was such that I could do an interview today and not rush to write the story and actually finish with my classes for the day and go back to work on the story. So I stuck with him between 2007 and 2011. So I was working with the newspaper, and then I started acting alongside as well. Till 2011, when I went back to visit my former colleagues at radio, they had started a TV station at the time. And I went to say hello to my former radio boss, who was now the boss at TV, because a friend told me he was there. I went to say hello to him, and it's like, oh, yeah, yeah, good. It's good you're here. You know, we're starting a TV station. We need news people. What are you doing now? And I told him what I was doing with the newspaper. He said, have you ever thought of doing TV? I said, well, yeah, I've thought about it. I've actually put in an application to a TV station, but I'm yet to hear from them. So he said, well, why don't you come and work with us? And I said, sure. So I worked with them between 2011 and till the end of 2015. I was a news anchor, news producer. And then in 2016, I left to work with a Pan-African television station in Congo, Brazzaville. And that was until 2018 when I came to the States to do my master's.
Okay. Wow, you have a good memory. I can't even remember my lines for theaters. You just remember all the dates.
Well, don't ask me any of the lines for my theater days because I don't think I remember any of them either.
Hilarious. So then fast forward to 2018, you came here, and where did you go to school?
Adelphi University on Long Island.
Okay, great school. Yeah. And you continued on in media and journalism?
No, well, surprisingly, at the time, I felt, I guess I can call it media fatigue. I was like, okay, I've done this media thing up until that point, a little over 10 years, and I wanted to try something new. So I came in to do a creative writing program because don't forget, in high school, I found myself as a writer and I wanted to be a writer. So I said, you know, yeah, let me just do that instead of going back to doing something media related. Because at that time, I had in my head that, you know, after my master's, that's it, I'm done with the media, not working in the media anymore. I'm just going to be a writer for life. Mm-hmm. But no, that's not really what happened. Right. But that's the story. Yeah.
That's funny. You see how those two worlds collided?
Yep.
That's really funny.
Just like my French and Spanish.
Exactly. That's funny. I have the same problem too. I studied French. I double majored in French and theater, but I speak Spanish too. So I do the same thing. I switch back and forth.
Exactly.
That's hilarious. So on to, let me ask you this. What do you feel is your impact on the world?
Ooh, how do I even answer that question? Yeah. If you had asked me this a few months or probably even a year ago, I'd probably say I don't know, and that would be the honest truth. Even though I feel like my reporting should or has made some impact, but you know, usually as journalists, we are just on the grind every day, chasing one story or the other. So personally, I don't even take a break to look at what kind of impact my work is having. But since I started my podcast with one of my former colleagues and friends, I think I can say that my impact so far has been trying to lift the veil off for the rest of the world to see Africa really as it is, because there's so many ideas about Africa as a continent out there, be it in Europe, be it in Asia, be it in the Americas. It's like people have different ideas. Some are true, some are fictional, and like when Black Panther came, it took it to a whole new level.
Yes, it did. It did.
Suddenly started believing, oh, we've underestimated these people, so they have this superpowers. They're like T'Challa. No, we are not exactly like T'Challa also, but we are not also as poor as you think we are, because a lot of the minerals that are used around the world actually come from Africa. They are mined in Africa and supplied to the world. Like
that's a whole other conversation we could get into. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The things that are used to produce these batteries that we have in our cell phones and all that, they are mined from Africa. But you know, people don't know all of that, and they just look at us and they look at these pictures of the starving kids that make the headlines sometimes, and they think that's all there is to Africa. So at least for the 2 seasons we've been doing this show, and with the kind of stories we've told, from the people, allowed people to tell. Actually, I think I should put it that way, because it's the people telling their own stories. Really, I feel like yeah, I'm helping in a way to demystify the African continent, and helping people see that, yeah, there is more to Africa than just, what meets the eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And that's why I asked you this question, because I want to tell you, I'm going to break the fourth wall here, because I do know you. And I have to say
Yeah.
that in the short amount of time that you've been doing this podcast, it's become one of my favorites. I listen
Oh,
to.
thank you.
Mhm. So I encourage everybody. So please tell everybody the name of the podcast again.
The Africa Talk podcast.
And I encourage everybody to listen to this podcast, because you exactly what you said. You're demystifying, these myths about Africa, and you're taking people's stories. And I have to say that you have inspired me to.
Oh,
This is why I'm doing the Africa Life series,
okay.
because you, as a podcaster, have inspired me to learn more. And my resolution for 2022, and I keep saying this all the time, was to learn as much as possible. This is the avenue that I'm going down right now, because I've been opened up and I have questions, and I want to know all these myths that we have about, and things that I don't know, that I can ask, and I can listen to your podcast and I learn, and I hear people's individual stories. There's also another myth that sort of circulates between African Americans and Africans, that, well, African Americans don't take advantage of what's given here. We're lazy. We're this. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have. And I also have questions when it comes to that, because sometimes I don't know, because you sometimes, since I've been here, I've watched a lot of documentaries, especially the ones that have to do with slavery and all. And even when you hear commentators speak on TV or on radio, and they talk about how slaves built America and all that, and I'm like, so why is there that perception that African Americans are lazy, if their ancestors technically built a lot of what exists today as America?
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah. And I think that's we can get into a discussion about that too on another time. But yeah, it's a systemic thing that's happened here, on the backs. This country was built on, the indigenous people, the African Americans, who were the first ones sold, as what's the word I'm looking for? Commercial
Slave?
products. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's the first commercialism, African Americans being sold
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So, there's a whole history that this country has, that Africa has in a different way, like the countries went in, like the UK, Great Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, and took the resources, and that's, as we talk about earlier, that's where batteries come from. That's where cocoa comes from. That's where, and they pillage, the country.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get too deep into that, but that's where those ideas come from. And what I wanted to do with this series, and with you in particular, was to, like you said, demystify that, and have a global outlook, and find ways that we can come together as communities, as African Americans, as people, as Black people, people of color, and join forces and learn more about each other. And with your podcast, you do that, and I commend you for that.
Thank you. And I think the more I think about it, I think it's also because, like, I hear Black people say it very often, and I think they've said it so much that people think it sounds like a broken record, that the system is against them. And in a lot of ways, it is true, because if you're striving to do something, but it's not really working for you, or because you're facing too many red tapes along the way, how do you expect that person to excel if you can't even get a simple loan to start a business?
Right.
And if you look deep down, and it comes to simply because of the color of his skin, then you can't tell me that that person is lazy, because that person is actually trying.
Right.
He or she was trying to get a loan, but the system was, or there was just too many bureaucratic tapes to get through. And at the end of the day, someone decided, oh no, that's it, you're not getting it. I don't see how you can say that such a person is lazy.
Right. And, you're talking about the United States where the laws are built against us,
Hmm.
and, you're considered three-fifth of a person,
Yeah.
and you're sold
Yeah.
as a commodity. You're sold as, yeah, yeah, like you're just not acknowledged. You have no voting rights,
Hmm.
for a while. And then, so you're slowly gaining footage in a country. And so, which is interesting, you said that about the bank, because yesterday, Bank of America announced that they were targeting Black and Hispanics in this country to give them loans to start owning
Mm.
homes, first time home buyers. So
See?
they're doing it as a trial in one, two, three, I think 5 different cities, to see if
Okay.
they can help people of color start to own things in the country. So
Hmm.
now we're seeing, I'm happy because we're seeing a shift,
Exactly.
towards equality and
Exactly.
diversity. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you give that effort out and then it doesn't work and you still hold that perception, then I won't begrudge you because, yeah, you can say we did the experiment and it failed because they really didn't want to do it or they really didn't want to pull their weight. But if you haven't really given people the chance to, try something out and you just make up your mind about them and decide to decline all the time, then I don't think you're being fair in the way you assess them at just saying, oh, these people don't want to work or whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we see a
Hmm.
shift in everything. We have to have acceptance of people. And I don't mean just
Yeah.
Black people, just all people.
Exactly.
It's not a matter of tolerating what people
Hmm.
do. It's a matter of accepting that we're all different and that there's
Yep.
something to learn from
Hmm.
every culture, you know.
Exactly.
And here in New
Exactly.
York, we're a little bit fortunate because we have such diversity that we
Hmm.
know if we sit on the train, we may be sitting next to someone from China, who's sitting next to
Exactly.
someone from Jamaica, who's sitting next
Hmm.
to someone from England,
Yep.
and in the midst of it all, we have to be accepting that our cultures are different,
Hmm.
but our needs are all the same,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely.
our
Yeah. We
needs are
all need
all the
shelter.
same.
We all need food. We
Right.
all need to get clothing. We all need work. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And
At
we
the end
have
of
to
the day.
treat each other with compassion and
Yep.
empathy,
Yep.
and
Absolutely.
survival. Yeah.
Yep.
What do you want us to know about who you are and what you do with your podcast? And where
Ooh.
do you see your life going?
Um. With the podcast, well, like I said initially, the idea is to demystify Africa as much as possible because my friend whom I started with, Benjamin, he had wanted to do a podcast and came to me and said, "Oh, I have this idea for a podcast, but it was mostly for a news podcast." And I had had an idea of doing a podcast as far back as 2016, but it was a different form of podcast. So when we finally sat and started thinking, and the podcast in its current format is something that I started dealing with more when I came here and started my master's program because I was doing a lot of writing and I realized I've lived my whole life on the African continent. I mean, I've visited a few countries in Africa, I've visited Europe once and all that. So every experience I know and can write about authentically is from an African perspective. But there isn't that much African perspective or presence in the media here, especially in the mainstream media. I mean, once in a while you hear about an African who did something, but yeah, at the end of the day, you don't really even get to know that person that well.
Right.
So I said, why don't we come up with something that gives Africans also a voice? Because if people think of us in this way and that way, and I hear a lot of African friends who have been here much longer talking about how they always have to explain Africa to people. Fortunately, I don't, in a rather weird way, I haven't had that much of a problem having to explain myself in Africa to people. Surprisingly, almost everyone I've encountered seems, well, either they know about Africa already or they just aren't interested. They haven't really asked me those questions that people say, like, oh, do you guys all live on trees? Do you have pets? Like, do you have lions as pets and all that? I haven't, honestly, I have never had any of those questions asked of me. But then I said, if there are people out there being asked these questions, why don't we let people also know that when you have Africans in your midst, be it in Europe or in America or in Asia or whatever, they are there to add value to you because they, believe it or not, a lot of Africans come into the United States and into Great Britain in particular already with a bachelor's degree. like me.
Wow.
They
Yeah.
come to have their master's degree, and then they realize, you know what, why don't I just stay here, harness my skills further? Because it's one thing to just learn it in the classroom and then just say, hey, I'm ready, go out and work. But if you're here and you can take advantage of the system, not take advantage in the bad, okay, that's the wrong way. If you're here and you can enhance your skills or sharpen your skills, whilst you're here, and become a much better version of the person you were before you came in, sure, why not? Take advantage of it. So the season started, for instance, with one of my professors from Adelphi who came here just like me as a graduate student, and she now is one of the associate provosts at Adelphi. She's really high up there in terms of ranking. So it goes to show that if you give people the chance, they can really shine. And those are the stories I'm trying to put out there about Africans so that people, I mean, besides what you think about the continent, think of us, the people, also as people who actually are worth something, people who have talents, who have skills, just like everybody else. And given the right environment and the right conditions, we do shine and we can shine and we are shining all the time. So that's what I'm trying to achieve with the podcast, that, let the world know there are people out there doing that. One of my friends who I spoke to also in season 1, Effie, she's Ghanaian but born in Australia. Today she's part of the Harry Potter Harry Potter and the Cursed Child on Broadway in Melbourne. This is a Ghanaian who started out.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Started her career not having much, finally got a chance to be in The Great Gatsby, the movie with Leo DiCaprio.
Love it.
I've seen that movie a few times, but I can't even point and say, oh yeah, this is Effie. But thankfully she was given credit. So that's added to her resume. Today she's on Broadway in Melbourne doing amazing stuff. So, there are stories like that that don't make the news.
You're exactly right. There's stories that need to be told. And,
exactly.
I think with you and with what I'm trying to do is we're changing the narrative about what people think. And, along to add on to what you were just saying, just in the last few years, look at the influx of Africans who are in movies, on stage, Broadway, like your friend Effie. Look at, even you mentioned Wakanda. That was like the biggest one that sparked it. But we have 12 Years a Slave. We have all these other movies that have come along and given, opened the doorway for, African people to be a part of this country.
Exactly. We celebrate Lupita Nyong'o today. We celebrate Chiwetel Ejiofor, but all these are Africans. And imagine if they hadn't been given the chance to, show off what they've got, their skills and all that. We wouldn't have had a Chiwetel. We wouldn't have had a Lupita who go on to win an Oscar and stuff like that. So I'm hoping eventually one day we get to a point where we can even get someone like a Chiwetel on the show to tell the part of his story that hasn't been told, that people don't know, how he had to struggle as a Nigerian kid raised in the UK, what challenges he faced, how he overcame them, how he finally got his break and stuff like that. Yeah. And the stories of everyday people like my professor, who nobody probably would know if they never went to Adelphi,
Yeah. The untold stories. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think we should leave them on that note. Let us know how we can get in touch with you and how we can find the podcast and what to expect coming up.
Okay. Well, the podcast is available on almost all the major platforms. It's on Apple, Google, Spotify, Audible, everywhere. It's the Africa Talk podcast. The Africa doesn't have an N. I noticed a few people sometimes make the mistake of saying African Talk. It's just Africa, then Talk, and then podcast. So you can find it on all those platforms. And you can follow the show's handles on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Africa Talk Pod. It's the short version of the podcast. So just pod, Africa Talk Pod. And you can follow me on Twitter as well. It's at Nii Smart, like the word smart, and then NII. So NIISMART, Nii Smart on Twitter. And once you follow us, you'll get to know more of what the show is about, what we have. You get to see our guests every week, and hopefully you become a convert like Marcus.
That's right. You absolutely will. I encourage everybody, please follow him and look and find his words on Twitter. I follow him on Twitter as well. at Africa Talk Pod, and go to Instagram, follow him there as well, at Nii Smart.
Yeah.
Nii, I want to thank you very, very much. Continue doing the incredible work that you do, uplifting the people of Africa and shining. I want to thank you for that. And thank you for your inspiration to me as a podcaster. And I'm also going to invite you, and everybody can listen to this. Hopefully you can, I would love for you to have an episode on the OneMicNite podcast. I will take one of your episodes and put it on, because I want people to know the stories that you're putting out there. It's incredible.
All right. Great. I look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Of course. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this episode. Please make sure you comment below, share this episode, and like this episode if you can. Follow the show at OneMicNite. OneMicNite is spelled OneMicNite. You can follow me at Marcos Luis, MarcosLuis. Go to the .com. You can find all the links on both OneMicNite.com or MarcosLuis.com. Find out what I have coming up. This, once again, is part of the African Life series. Also, make sure you check out Global Lighthouse Studios, which we are partnering with to bring you some of the African schools that are in need of help. And that'll be listed in the episode notes below. Thank you for joining me for this episode. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.